Good morning.
You talked a little bit about your training at Rockville, is that right?
Yes, yes.
Now, in your training, you were given an employee handbook, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
In that handbook, it taught you about these emergency protocols.
Yeah.
correct? You talked about the stop and the maintenance levers.
Right.
Now, just for clarification of the court, this stop button was a bright red button, is that correct?
See, it's generalized in the handbook as a green button for go, a red button for stop, and a blue lever for maintenance, but each ride is individual. Mine was switches.
So, just to clarify, on the ride at Rockville, the stop button is a big bright red button, and the maintenance lever is a blue lever, is that correct?
On some of them, yes, but on mine it was a red switch.
Is it your testimony today that not on all of the rides at Rockville, that the stop button is not a bright red button, while the maintenance lever is a blue lever?
Like I said, each ride is individual. It's different from ride to ride. My ride had switches. Some of them had bright red buttons and blue levers. Some of them had very small buttons. Some of them even had turn keys.
So like I asked earlier, you would recognize a copy of the employee handbook if I handed it to you, isn't that right?
Oh yeah, of course.
Let the record reflect I'm approaching opposing counsel with the Rockville music. Let the record reflect what have I just handed you, Mr. Rice?
This is the employee manual for Rockville.
Is it a fair and accurate copy of it?
It seems to be yes.
And this is the copy that you were given on your first day at Rockville, isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, if I can direct your attention to the second to last page, on the bottom where it starts about the emergency protocol,
Okay.
can you outlay anywhere in that, does it say that the button, that these switches are different on each? Like the switch themselves are different on every ride?
No.
So just for clarification, the only thing that this handbook says is that on the rides, the only thing that's different is where the buttons and levers are on the rides, isn't that correct?
Where they are, yes.
So then again, just for clarification, on the rides, the button, the bright red stop button, and there's a blue lever for maintenance, is that correct?
That's what the handbook says, yes.
The record reflect, I'm approaching the witness with the same document. Now, moving on to your encounters with Whit Bowman. Now, you would say you're pretty close with the defendant, isn't that right?
I know Whit. Like I said, we worked together during the summer, and so yes, I would say I know Whit Bowman.
And you occasionally have to leave work early, isn't that correct?
Yes, my mom has MS, and I have to help take care of her, so I need to leave from time to time.
That's understandable. Well, when you do have to go home, you ask Whit Bowman to take care of the tunnel repair ride for you, isn't that right?
Yeah, normally Whit is the person I go to, and Whit is normally more than willing to help out.
So, to clarify, Whit Bowman is fairly comfortable at the tunnel of terror since he's operated that ride for you.
I can't say if he's comfortable or not. I don't know. I can say he's operated it a few times when I've had to go home, but I can't say if he's comfortable or not.
And now, on August 30th specifically, you remember that day pretty well, don't you?
Yeah.
On this day, Whit Bowman came up to you an unusual amount of times, correct?
Yeah,
About 7 or 8 times, you would say?
around there, yeah.
Now, in these 7 or 8 times, he actually came up to you about 3 times to offer to take over the ride for you, isn't that correct?
Yeah. like we stated earlier, Whit did take over from time to time, so it was kind of one of those things that I just didn't really pay attention to.
But when you did take over your ride, you were always the one who asked him. Isn't that right?
Typically, yeah, but like I said earlier, he does take over quite often, so it was not really unusual, I guess.
So just to clarify, on normal days, you go up to Whit Bowman when you have to leave early. And this was unusual since on this day, Whit Bowman came up to you and offered it.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, on this day, he came up to you these 3 times, but then also a 4th time. Isn't that correct? To offer to take over your ride?
Yeah, like I said, like we said earlier, he was there probably 7 or 8 times.
But on this 4th time, in fact, he relayed a message to you from your boss, Mr. Longstreet.
Yeah,
And in this message, it was that you were to go home early, Whit Bowman would take over your ride.
Objection, Your Honor. You're set.
How did you say?
There are 2 statements that opposing counsel is referring to. One statement from Longstreet to Whit Bowman, another statement from Whit Bowman to Mr. Isaacs. I'm not objecting to the statement between Whit Bowman and Mr. Isaacs because Whit Bowman is the party representative of this case, which would be a party opponent to them, which is an exception to hearsay. However, I am objecting to the statement from J.C. Longstreet to Whitney Bowman. That statement is an out-of-court statement being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted, so it's hearsay.
May I respond?
Sure.
The statement that is being elicited by Mr. Longstreet, allegedly by the defendant Whit Bowman, is not being used to prove the truth of the matter asserted, and the fact that the message is not what we're trying to prove. What we're trying to prove is that Mr. Bowman had the intent to operate the tunnel of terror by the fact that, if I may make an offer of proof,
Yes.
later on in this cross-examination, I will ask the witness whether or not Mr. Longstreet actually did say this message. This goes to the credibility of the defendant and whether or not this message was legitimate. I'm not trying to prove the truth of the matter asserted in that message directly, but rather the subsequent action of the defendant and Whit Bowman's intent to operate the tunnel of terror.
Response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. In order to understand the truth of the matter asserted, we have to understand the statement from J.C. Longstreet. J.C. Longstreet's statement was for Whit Bowman to take over Billy Isaacs' ride. That being that Whit Bowman actually did take over that ride is the truth of the matter asserted, and that's exactly what the statement is asserting. Because right after that, Whit Bowman did take over the ride. Therefore, it is for the truth of the matter asserted, not the subsequent actions, not the effect on the listener, but exactly that, the truth that Whit Bowman did take over the ride.
My response? Yes. No, Whit Bowman, yes, he did take over the ride in tunnel of terror, but like the witness stated, that's a normal thing, that Whit Bowman does take care of that ride. So we're not proving anything against Whit Bowman in that sense. What we're proving is that he had the intent on August 30th to be at the ride. Not necessarily what Mr. Longstreet's statement really was, but the fact that what the defendant was relaying did cause him to operate the tunnel of terror on this day. Therefore, we're not using the statements again by Mr. Longstreet to prove any sort of truth based on what he said, but rather the actions of Whit Bowman on that day.
The objection will be overruled. You may answer.
Your Honor, I asked for a limiting instruction at that point then.
Eliminating the proving.
Limiting instruction for J.C. Longstreet's statement, that they're not using it for the truth of the matter asserted, but rather different actions.
Now, that will certainly be given.
Yes, Your
Honor. The intent issue. Proceed.
Yes, sir. Would you like me to react to the question?
yes, please.
So now, this 4th time that Whit Bowman came up to you, he was relaying this message from Mr. Longstreet, correct?
Yes, that was my understanding.
And this question, and this message was that you were to go home early, correct?
Yes.
Whit Bowman would take over your ride,
Yeah.
and you would have full pay.
Well, I don't know about that last part, but yeah, I'm assuming
Okay.
that's how going forward.
Now, moving along. Now, later on, after you left, you went to see Mr. Longstreet to thank him for letting you off early, isn't that right?
Yes, I did, but I was unable to.
And because you were unable to, you just decided to leave the park.
Yeah, well, it was, the message had already been conveyed to me, so I left like I was told.
So you left, and then you passed Cameron Pool on your way out, isn't that right?
Yeah, he was sitting out there.
Now, you're familiar with Cameron Pool, correct?
I've seen him around the park, yeah.
He used to work at the park, to
Oh.
the best of your knowledge.
Yes.
So now, when you saw Cameron Pool, you had a little bit of conversation with him, isn't that right?
Yeah, we exchanged a few words.
He asked you if Whit Bowman was operating tunnel of terror at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You thought that was weird, so you asked him why. or how he knew,
Well, yeah.
but he just smirked and walked away.
No, he mumbled something about that happening from time to time, and he was right.
Now, moving on to the next day, the day after August 30th. When this happened, you went into work and saw Mr. Longstreet, isn't that right?
Yes,
But he fired you.
basically on the spot.
He fired you for leaving early the previous day.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Why is it not speculative?
It's not speculation, since we're not going into the state of mind of Mr. Longstreet, but rather his statements to the witness, and that he was fired because he was leaving early. We're not going to the state of mind or the thoughts of Mr. Longstreet, but rather what he stated to the witness.
May I respond to that, Your Honor? If opposing counsel is using it to say that J.C. Longstreet actually made a statement to this witness to give him that information, then I would amend my objection to hearsay.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
This is in fact not hearsay, and except that we're not using these statements again by Mr. Longstreet to prove the truth that he was fired, but rather the subsequent action of what Billy Isaacs did say after he was fired, and within the actions that happened after he was fired. If I may make an offer of proof.
Well, you know, I don't think that matters, because I believe it is speculative, and I will sustain the objection and ask you to move on in your inquiry.
Yes, right. Now, Mr. Isaacs, you now going back to your encounters with Bowman on August 30th. When he took over your ride, he said something to you, isn't that right?
Yes.
In fact, he asked you whether or not you operated blackout mode, correct?
Yes, which was strange because he already knew that that's happened, and I reminded him not to use it.
So, just to clarify for the court today, right before the defendant took over your ride of Tunnel of Terror on August 30th, he asked you about blackout mode.
Objection, Your Honor. Ask the answer.
Your Honor, I was just clarifying for the court what happened based on when he said it.
No, I'll allow it in these circumstances. Go ahead.
Would you like to repeat the question?
Oh, no, fine. Yes, he did ask about blackout.
Thank you. I have no further questions.